Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Very excited to have everyone here. We've got some rep agency leaders in the house. Today is all about communication. And these webinars are very interactive. So I encourage everyone here, have your journals out. You're going to want to write this stuff down. Okay. So if you're driving, totally get it. But don't be busy working on emails while you're watching this webinar, or you're going to miss out. You're going to miss out on some goods. You're going to want to take notes. Trust me, this stuff is really powerful and you can implement it right away. One of the things that I know you're struggling with every single day as you lead a business is holding your team accountable. Raise your hand if accountability comes up in your business on a regular basis. Hey, you know what? They're not doing what they said they're going to do. How can I get them to meet these expectations? So that's the next big word is expectations, right? Are your team members meeting the expectations that you're setting forth as you lead them towards success and performance? And that is a really important thing to remember. The onus always falls on the leader. The leader is the one who needs to hold people accountable. And I'm going to share some ways that are going to help drive that accountability forward with you today, and hold your team to the expectations that you're setting in the business. Some of you may be familiar with some of these frameworks because you've worked with me before, and some of you, this is going to be brand new. So it's a great refresher for those that need it, and a great way to start kicking things off for those who are struggling with these challenges. So the two things that I want to make sure that you get a handle on today are better ways to hold your team accountable and yourself, and make sure that your expectations are absolutely clear when it comes to goals, objectives, initiatives, the things that you need from them. All right. And if that works for you, give me a thumbs up, say yes in the chat. Yes, that sounds great. We're going to move forward with some ways to do that. Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to tackle is what I call 2x2 feedback. All right. When we are managing teams, when we're running teams, one of the greatest gifts we can give to each other is feedback. Feedback helps increase performance. Feedback allows for continuous improvement. Feedback is one of the best ways that you can truly understand each other and work towards meeting common goals. All right. And improve and step in to that next version of yourself as you grow your career, as you lead your business, as you grow your business. So this concept of 2x2 feedback is very simple. All right. And I've got a few clients on this call that I'm sure I've already implemented. If you've already implemented 2x2 feedback, write 2x2 in the chat if you're familiar with it. But 2x2 feedback is simple. Okay. You've got the leader and you've got the contributor. All right. And in this case, we'll talk in sales. Okay. So you've got a sales leader. He's on the road with his salesperson, and you do a meeting. You do a client face-to-face meeting. All right. And in this meeting, it goes almost the way you planned it. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a presentation. There's an opportunity that arises. And the two of you are in this meeting together. And after the meeting is when you have an opportunity to give each other 2x2 feedback. And this needs to become a really entrenched habit if you really want this to work. And the idea is that the leader starts with one question and says, hey, salesperson, you know what? Thanks for taking me to this meeting. What's one thing you did well in that meeting? So the leader asks the salesperson, what's one thing you did well in that meeting? Okay. Salesperson says, you know what? I asked really, really powerful impact question around this particular subject, and I drew out an awesome opportunity. I think I did that really well. So they respond. And then the leader has then an opportunity to chime in and say, you know what? I agree. You did that very well. Fantastic. But then has an opportunity to offer feedback and share what they think the salesperson did very well as well. That's where the 2x2 comes in. Okay. So salesperson shares one thing they did really well. And then the sales leader says, here's what I believe you did very well in that call. At which point the salesperson has invited that feedback because they've already opened the door to sharing what they believe they've done well. So sales leader can say, you know what, you also did a great job at setting up a follow-up date. And that's really important because we got to follow this through in the sales process. Great work. Okay. The second question then becomes, what's one thing you would do better next time? Okay. So see what we're doing here? We're going one thing did well to a one thing do better next time. So salesperson, what's one thing you would do better next time? They could chime in and say, you know what? I totally forgot to bring the samples. And I knew that when that opportunity arose after I brought up that impact question and that I could, it would have made so much more sense for me to have it ready in my pocket. That would have been magic. Okay. Then the 2x2 piece is sales leader says, you're right. You know, I think you could do that better. I agree. But here's one thing that I think you could do better next time as well. Constructive feedback opportunity. There's no resistance because it's an open conversation and you've earned the right to offer that advice and feedback in a safe environment. And you can say, you know, I really think that next time you could have come a little more prepared with this, and this. So, you know, and all of this feedback is to help improve performance. The beauty about 2x2 feedback is that it goes both ways. So then the habit that you want to get into is that you give the salesperson an opportunity to ask the sales leader the same question. All right. So now it's your turn as a salesperson. You say, okay, Mr. Manager, you know, what's one thing that you did well in that call? Sales manager shares, salesperson agrees, and then offers some feedback of what they believe their sales manager did well in that call. Because as leaders, you also want to receive feedback upwards. And they're going to feel a lot more comfortable giving that feedback if you create this routine, this cadence around asking these questions on a regular basis. And then the same question around what would you do better next time? Salesperson asks that to the sales leader. Sales leader speaks up. Salesperson agrees and then also, or disagrees, and then also gives what they believe they should do better next time. So that is the simplicity of the 2x2 feedback framework. And it's all about doing this after every single interaction together, whether that's customer facing, whether that's at a trade show, at a conference. If you're spending time with an individual contributor and there was an experience that occurred, you have an opportunity to offer 2x2 feedback, ask one question around what went well and another around what would you do better next time. And you watch how the accountability starts to increase and how expectations start getting more clear because you're on the same page and you're helping each other. You're walking alongside each other in that feedback journey. All right. So if that makes sense to you, type yes in the chat and we'll move on to the next portion of the communication and feedback. All right. Excellent. Excellent. We got a lot of yeses. I love it. It's clear. The expectation now is that you're going to use 2x2 feedback. So take a moment and journal down. When are you going to start using the 2x2 feedback framework? What's the next interaction that makes sense for you to apply that? All right. The next piece we're going to cover is expectations and performance. We all have team members. And don't mind my chicken scratch. I'm doing my best to write as clearly as possible. My 10-year-old daughter writes beautifully. I don't know where she gets it from. She doesn't get it from me, that's for sure. So we all have team members where we're questioning, why, how come they're not, why can't they get this stuff done? Like, what's happening here? I got one team member who's always exceeding my expectations, but this other team member, man, he's not inputting in the CRM. He's never sending me the reports on time, not doing their expenses on time, all the things, right? So there's four reasons why. There's four reasons why your team members are not performing. They're not meeting your performance expectations. All right. The first reason is that the expectations are not clear. Here's the thing. The first person you need to look at when your team members aren't meeting performance expectations as the leader is yourself. You have to look yourself right in the mirror and ask, have I made the expectations absolutely crystal clear? And I'll venture to say that most of the time, the expectations are clear to you, but perhaps there's a gap between the expectation understanding of your team members. So that leaves you an opportunity to step up in your leadership and reestablish clarity around the expectations, whether that's in a one-on-one meeting, or that's as a group meeting, or you make an announcement, or an email blast, whatever it might be. But number one reason is that expectations aren't clear. Okay? So you have an opportunity to make the expectations clear. The second reason is that they don't know how. They don't know how to do how to meet that expectation clearly. Give you an example, right? Get a new CRM system. You've got all these cells to fill out. They keep coming up short. Well, have they had the proper training? Have they developed the skills, knowledge, and discipline necessary to get that done? And that's where, again, you need to look at yourself and you need to really think about, have I set my team up for success, or am I just expecting them to figure it out, right? There are things that we want them to figure out for themselves, but when it comes to critical expectations, we need to give them the skills, the tools, the knowledge, the training, the discipline necessary in order to get the job done correctly. So you have an opportunity now, once you've asked the question, have I made the expectations absolutely clear? Yes. Okay. Have I taught them how? Have they given them the tools they need to do it properly? And then you can revisit that, and you can run through that and make sure that they do. And once you've done that and you know that they know how, the third reason is that they're choosing not to. Okay? And that's when it starts to get a little bit in tandem, where it's not just looking at you, it's also looking at them. And you need to understand, okay, well, why are they choosing not to? Do they lack confidence? Are they checked out? Are they having problems at home? There could be a variety of reasons, right? But you need to understand why they're choosing not to. And from there, you can offer them guidance and get really clear on how you can support them. And that's where the COIN framework is going to come in here in a moment, and I'll walk you through that. Okay? But generally, at this point, you can still help them. You can still help them and guide them towards meeting those performance expectations, all right? By ensuring the expectations are clear, they know how, and that you're helping them navigate through, maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe there's, because there could be underlying issues, right? If they're having prioritization issues, help them get prioritized. Different ways you can approach it. But the key here is to understand why they're choosing not to. And then you pivot and you rectify that problem. Okay. But the fourth reason, they're simply incapable. And that's usually, worst case scenario. All right. They're incapable, and you need to treat that situation with serious thought. All right. What am I going to do with this person? I've gone through all the motions. I've made the expectations clear. They know how. I've helped them navigate through why they're not doing it. This person just doesn't get it. So that's when you ask, are they maybe they're not in the right role? Perhaps there's an opportunity to give them something else within your company, or occasionally you got to make the decision to let them go. Okay. But this 4 reasons why at least gives you clarity on the reasons why they're not meeting performance expectations. All right. We can simplify it down to these 4 things. And these 4 things are really important to understand. So if this makes sense to you, type yes in the chat, and I'm going to move on to how to deal with this part right here. They're choosing not to, or, we got to get past that. Perfect. We got a bunch of yeses. Everything's clear. All right. So now we're going to talk about coins. So one of the best tools that we can apply, come on, let's blow up. Here we go, is called the coin framework. All right. So coin is a feedback framework where when you have team members that aren't meeting your expectations, okay, but they know how, and you need to get more serious about how you're giving them the feedback so that they're truly moving towards rectifying this situation, use what's called COIN. Okay. COIN stands for context, observation, impact, and next steps. All right. So you're in a situation, you've made the expectations clear, they know how to do it, team members still not doing the work. All right. You pull them in, you sit them down, you have a heart-to-heart, and you give them some context. You say, look, there's this objective that you need to hit. You've got a $2 million revenue objective to hit. You know that you need a pipeline of X amount of dollars to hit that revenue objective. And what I'm observing is that your pipeline is very, very light. And that every time that we've got together to talk about stoking that pipeline, you've come up with a ton of excuses, and you're not doing what I'm asking you to do, which is to pump up that pipeline activity, because it's going to be critical for you to hit your revenue targets. And the impact, and that's when we move to impact, we just gave context, observation. The impact that that's having is that we're behind on our sales targets. And now, we may have to cut expenses, and it's eating up some of my time doing critical strategic work, walking you through filling up your pipeline, which is what I hired you for in the first place. So we talk about the impact. The most important piece here is getting clear on the next steps. Okay. So once you've shared context, observation, impact, you say, so here's what we're going to do. All right. You're going to spend some time over the next week really uncovering every opportunity in your territory. You're going to flip every rock. You're going to call every prospect, and you're going to come back to me on Monday in my office with a stoked pipeline. Now, I'm being really aggressive in this particular example, but it's an example. All right. And you set the clear next step. And I would like for you to give me an update on Friday before our meeting on Monday as to where you are in the pipeline. Updates. Okay. From there, what you do is you send an email recapping the discussion, these things. All right. And clearly outline the next steps, and you send it to your team member so that there's no hearsay, there's no gaps in communication. It's absolutely clear. Okay. And then from there, you take it to the next step, which is you meet again and you review what those next steps were. Okay. You may have to revisit a few times. All right. Here's some context. All right. I asked you to come here on Monday with the Stoke pipeline. And what I'm observing is that you got nothing in here. This is not impactful at all. In fact, the impact that this is having is it's having me consider, whether or not you're in the right position or not. Now, I'm being very aggressive in this example. There are a lot of lighter nudges and less serious situations that occur. Okay. But the point I'm making is that you can use the coin framework to share the context, observation, and impact, and then give next steps again. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to show up on Wednesday, and we're going to spend the whole morning together. All right. And you're going to sit here and you're going to fill that pipeline by doing research online, whatever it might be. Okay. And I'm going to support you through that. Okay. Because clearly you need some help. But your role as the leader is to guide them and move them towards that performance. And the coin framework acts as a really easy way to remember how to frame it, how to share that feedback with your team members so that you can clearly define a next step and work towards a resolution. Sometimes we need to put consequences, all right? And that's what you got to start thinking about is if this is a repeat offender, what are the consequences going to be? It's that whole adage when you were a kid, right? If you don't do this, you're not going to get your dessert. All right. So maybe that consequence is you can't go to a trade show or a conference, or you can't do road trips or take customer golfing until we get this resolved. Or maybe it's withholding a bonus or a commission. Who knows? All right. All those things are all depends on the individual situations. But the point is you need to understand and start getting clear on what the consequences are if you keep seeing the same behavior repeat itself. All right. I'm hoping that makes sense to everybody. Type yes in the chat if it makes sense to you. You get what the coin framework is, and it's going to be useful in your day-to-day. If there's a no, raise your hand, and I can help clarify. Sounds like everybody gets it. Perfect. I'm making the expectations absolutely clear. Fantastic. All right. The last piece I want to cover, now that we've covered 2x2 feedback, we've also covered the 4 reasons why your team members aren't meeting performance expectations. And then finally, the coin framework is a weekly meeting structure. We ran a poll earlier around weekly meeting structures. Okay. Weekly meetings. One of the reasons why people find meetings to be wasteful and time wasters is because they spend the entire meeting looking back, talking about what happened last week. Hey, how did that go? What do your numbers look like? Perfect. Yeah, great. And it's not performance driving. It's actually reviewing what happened in the past. So when you have a weekly meeting structure, you want to design them in a way that are focused on performance. All right. So here's what it looks like. And I'm going to email everyone here a copy of my weekly one-on-one structure that many of my clients have implemented with great success. If you want to receive that, type weekly in the chat, and I'll make sure that we email it to everyone here. Okay. So you want your meetings to be focused on performance. All right. And to do that, you have a 60-minute meeting and you do it one-on-one. Okay. With your direct reports. Okay. Now, if you've got more than 6, 7 direct reports, gets kind of busy doing them weekly. So then it's okay to start doing them biweekly. But the important thing is that you're on a cadence, that you're constantly in a routine around it, and that you schedule time forward for the entire year, same time, same place, so that you can go over these details. Okay. You spend the first 5 minutes looking back. Okay. So that's what it looks like. First 5 minutes is the look back. Hey, what was the big win last week? How are your numbers versus targets? All right. What were some of the challenges you faced last week? You don't spend any more than 5 minutes taking a look back. All right. But the next 30 minutes is the look forward. The meat and potatoes of the meeting. All right. What are the top priorities? And you can usually look at 3 to 5 of them in that 35-minute period or 30-minute period that you're going to be working on this upcoming week, right? Opportunities, projects, initiatives. Okay. What are those top priorities that you need to focus on? Customers that you're visiting that are going to drive performance, drive results, right? And this all should be related to net new incremental revenue, always. Most activities that we do in business should be revenue driving activities. Yes, it's fun to maintain relationships. Yes, it's fun to go golfing. Yes, it's fun to protect business, but you should always be talking about new opportunities and driving that business forward. Okay. So what are the top 3 to 5 opportunities, projects, initiatives that you're working on? And what challenges are you faced with when it comes to those? And that gives you a great opportunity to discuss, as the leader and your individual contributor, how you can overcome these challenges. You talk about how to overcome. Okay. What's the approach going to be? And in most cases, what you want to position yourself as is the one who's guiding them to come up with those approaches themselves. That's that transformational coaching piece I was talking about earlier. Okay. You can easily say, they say, oh, I have this challenge. You say, well, do this. Or you can say, well, what are 3 different approaches that you can take to overcome that challenge? And then get them to pick the best one. The 1-3-1 rule. Okay. I could do a whole webinar on that subject. So you talk about the challenges, how to overcome. And the whole idea here is speed to sale. How can you drive these things faster so that these opportunities, these projects, these initiatives are being, are executed effectively and you're receiving POs. Okay. So that's what that 30-minute look forward is all about. Then the last 5 minutes is all about talent development. 5 to 10 minutes if you want. You got some time left. Okay. And we have a 60-minute meeting. You want to finish this within 50 minutes if you can, so that you can give each other time to move on to your next call. All right. But this is where you focus on what knowledge, skill, or discipline does that team member intend on working on this week? All right. Oh, you know what? I need to skill up on this product line. Okay, great. What are you going to do about that? Well, I'm actually going to jump in on a webinar on Thursday from the manufacturer. Perfect. Okay. So you take notes of all this stuff. Okay. But what's important is that if you want to drive performance in an organization, that you avoid your team always being just stuck in the rudimentary day-to-day stuff without growing their skill sets. So as a leader, you have an opportunity in your one-on-ones to help them remember what knowledge, skills, and discipline do they need to work on. What are they going to work on so you can help them and make sure they're doing it. Hold them accountable to it. So always take notes, both of you, okay? You, the leader, and make sure that you ask your team member to take notes. And then ask your team member to recap takeaways in an email and send it to you. And that becomes the accountability piece so that the expectations are met. And it's just got to be in bullet points. All right. Nothing elaborate. Don't write a book. Just, hey, send me a recap and bullet points of what your takeaways are and your action items. Okay. Bullet 1, take that webinar from this manufacturer. Bullet 2, I got to talk to this department because that's how I'm going to overcome this challenge for this opportunity, etc. So that when you circle back in the next call, your look back, you can include that email as something to review. And you're building a real momentum wheel here around looking forward and driving results, running a performance-focused organization and team. So, I covered a lot of ground, but what I want to talk about real quick before we wrap up this call is the power of implementing these sort of tools with support from a coach. Okay. That's why you're on this call today. You're on this call today because you want to learn and you want to take away some valuable tools, tips, and tricks that are going to help you elevate your leadership and effectively grow your business, manage your time, and just enjoy things at a more effective level. So what I've got here is, can you see this here? I ran a poll recently, okay, for a number of my clients that haven't been working with me for a while, all right, past clients. And I wanted to check in and see how were they doing on some of the main challenges. And one of the questions I asked was, hey, after working with my program, how much time have you been able to effectively shift from reactive? We talked about that earlier in the poll, right? A lot of everyone's got this challenge of being reactive culture and not proactive. But how much time have you been able to shift from reactive to actual strategic proactive work? And as you can see here, of the respondents, 50% said 3 to 5 hours per week. Close to 42% said 6 to 10 hours per week. And at the minimum, 0 to 2 hours. So very powerful that when you shift your mindset and you apply some of these tools that I'm teaching, you can certainly create some valuable time that allows you to be more proactive and starts to create and build that proactive culture that all of us are really, really longing for. Okay. The next question I asked was, how much percentage of business growth did you see after working with me? And we had anywhere from 5% up to 35%. I had one client who said they were flat, okay, but had it not been for the program, they would have been below the previous year. All right. So know that by partnering with a coach, not only are you going to save time for yourself and build a proactive culture, but you're also going to grow your business, okay? And you're going to find ways to communicate way more effectively with your team members. How long did it take for these folks to achieve these results? The majority said after about 6 months. That's why I run 6-month programs, okay? 25% said after 1 month. That's incredible. That's like, the anomaly. I love seeing that. It makes me happy. And a strong percentage said anywhere, after the first 2 to 3 months, okay? So some powerful things here. And here are some of the key words that they drew from working with me. Some people really felt like they were evolving. Some people got better at delegation. They're more focused. Their CRMs are just humming. They're doing amazing. They're leading their team. They're confident. They're successful. They're predictable. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's some really cool wins where I have a client who launched a new education program. So one of the big goals that he had over the course of his career running his business was that he wanted to set up a university where he would invite contractors in and coach them to really grow his business from that angle, because he'd been chasing them and he wanted to draw them to him. And with some careful planning, some strategic work, and clear goal setting with my help, he set up and launched his new education program, built an in-house university, and he's educating hundreds of contractors a year and generating huge business from that. Amazing. Some have developed some incredible CRM strategies. The roles within their business is far more predictable, and systemization and SOPs have allowed them to scale. And this is the rating. I get some 10 ratings working with me, some 9s, some 8s. I love the honesty. All right. Love that the 10 is way up there. But here you go. I wanted to share that because I've launched a private coaching program, and I'm inviting 10 people to join me for this private coaching program, where I guarantee that within the first 4 months of working with me, you are going to pivot a minimum of 7 hours on a weekly basis to proactive strategic work from reactive. And I'm also going to do this with such confidence that if you're not satisfied and you do the work, you do all the work, and you come to the calls and we work on this together and you go through the modules, that if you're not satisfied within the first 60 days of where things are going, I'll just refund your money flat out. I'll just give you your money back. Okay. I'm also going to add in some free goodies for those that join the 6-month program, private one-on-one. You'll get a free copy of my journal, as well as some free webinars for your team members that have $1,000 value as a minimum for each of those. So if you're interested in that, scan this code right here and let's book a discovery call today, and let's see if it's a good fit for you. Let's see if one-on-one coaching is right for you. I'm going to help you step up into your leadership at a level you never had. You're going to gain clarity on the roles in your business. You're going to lead your team far more effectively. You're going to become way more proactive, and you're going to save yourself some valuable time. Go out, get out there. Before you hang up, I want you to set an intention. Which tool am I going to implement right away? Am I going to implement the 2x2 feedback framework? Am I going to use the coin framework? Or am I going to implement the weekly one-on-one structure as my first thing? I don't expect you to launch all of them right away, but at least pick one, okay? And you can feel free to send me some feedback on how things are working for you. Thank you, everyone. Take care.